Hello and welcome back to Darkstorm Rising. We're going to continue with the Lovecraftian theme today. I really am enjoying painting the Death May Die figures. I really do enjoy Call of Cthulhu, the role-playing game, that whole mythology. And one of the creatures that is like a huge, brooding, intimidating presence in the mythology is the Shoggoth. And I want to see if I can give the miniature that they've created for Death May Die, do it some justice and try and bring some of that brooding presence, that horrific, terrifying presence across in the miniature. Well, there's no point in just talking about it. Let's get to the table. So here we have the Shoggoth, the creature that fuels nightmares. And hopefully we're going to do it some justice. Now I've been having a look at a few different paint schemes to see which I like the look of, and I've seen some that have gone a bit colourful, I've seen some that have gone very black, and that I'm going to go for that more traditional black tone. So what we'll do first is the tubers on the bottom here, the little mouthpieces. I think we'll work on those first, and then we'll go over to the skin. I don't think this model should take too long, but we'll see. Sometimes they can fool you. Right, so first colours then. So the first colours that I'm working with are Vallejo black and burnt red. And what I'm going to do is all of the mouth area is going to get a coat of this nice dark mixture. And what it'll do is I'm going to just gently stroke over. If you look at the little pseudopoda, if you stroke over the tops of them, they nicely stay black in the middle. And I'm going to work virtually down to like the base shadows with this burnt red black mixture. And some of them do have what look like teeth in there, inside the little pseudopodii or whatever they are, and what we'll do is we'll paint those later, but we're just revealing them as we stroke over the top. And we'll just carry on working our way around all of this, giving it a nice coat of rich red. Now I've worked my way around them all. There are some quite deep recesses. It's been very well sculpted and gives you a lot of relief. But to actually get into those recesses, then really what you're going to need to do is put quite a bit of moisture on your brush so that it actually does get into those recesses and actually give you a decent amount of paint coverage. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to start to set a little bit more tone. I'm going to come to the dark red on its own and just go a little bit higher, dropping to a smaller brush. The next part of the process is fairly straightforward. We're just using a dark red. I'm using a very small brush, 00, and all I'm doing is I'm just going around and I'm picking out the upper surfaces of any of these tubers, and I'm just moving a little bit inside the lower surface just so that you can see a little way into it because of how the light would cast down onto it, and drawing in some of the lines that are detailed there in the mouth and just giving a little bit more presence to some of the higher areas. Just stroke over the mouths. I can see that there are little teeth in some of them, but we're going back to those later. We don't need to worry about that just yet. A little bit more in there. And literally just delicately working your way around and just catching all those areas and just pushing a little bit of depth into some of the recesses. And just slowly working your way around the mouth area. So the next part of the process is to start to bring a bit more definition in. So I've got some medium fleshed Vallejo paint mixed in with the dark or burnt red, and now what we're going to do is again even more just try and catch the highlights. And again, just run around the bottom edge and into the beginnings of the bottom of any more, just to emphasize that light is penetrating into that object. And the red does seem to quite like to absorb the paint it's already that's being laid on it, so it does darken up quite quickly, so it may be just going back and just touching over this. And literally we're just going to work our way around, and when we get to the edges of the mouth I'm going to slowly work my way to black. So we're just gently just tapping away on the colours there. The teeth will reset later, so don't worry too much about those at the moment. But anything that's going to be prominent, it's going to be a highlight, is getting a coating of this mixture. I'll just gently tap into the edges here. And what we'll do is this flesh tone at the edge here, we will later blend that into a grey and turn it into part of the skin tone. So we'll continue to work our way around here. So you can see that we're virtually done now. And as you get into the gaps between each of these like little pseudopodii, there are like little wrinkles in the flesh, and if you just try and just follow those with the tip of your brush, it will just enhance that fleshiness to the structure. So that's now got all of the mixture of the medium and the dark red set. I've just got a couple of little bits at the bottom here to finish off, and then I'm actually going to start with the medium flesh tone on its own. So the work has now started on the medium flesh tones. We'll bring that in nice and close so you can see. And now what we're doing is just gently, really on the more extreme highlights now, is just dabbing some highlights on, just with the tip of the brush, and just generating that higher skin tone. I've got quite a thin down solution now, and you'll see I've got a little puddle of water over here that I'm moving into the paint as I mix it to keep it nice and dilute, just to give me a bit better control, wipe any excess off on my hand. And then we are looking for any patterns that are really obvious, catching the upper edge of any of the little vesicles, and then just the bottom edge, so upper edge again, catching any top rings, bottom edge, and just keep making sure that you're plenty of moisture on your brush so you've got nice control. And then just in on these details in here. Use the side of your brush just to catch those upper surfaces, and then swap to the bottom edge. So having now completed virtually the same process with all of the medium skin tone, I'm now going to go back in with quite a jump in highlight to Basic Flesh Tone by Vallejo, and that's going to be really now to pick out the upper edges and really just re-emphasize all of the highlight areas. And if, like with this one here where it's overhung, I'm not going to apply anything on the upper surface, because it would be just in that little bit of extra shade, so we'll ignore it. And we're just catching these upper extreme surfaces. Here where there's some exposed flesh, we'll just chuck a couple of little bits of definition. And again, we'll work our way around on the edges of the mouth. We'll just put a few highlights in there. Just tiny little dots, but they really pop. And we'll go over all of that and then we'll be back. So we've now been around all of those little pseudopodii, and we've given them all some highlights. Now we need to reset the depth and also bring all of the colours together. So we're going to do two things, and the first is we're going to get some contrast paint, some volupus pink, and we're going to put it on the palette and we're going to turn it into a very, very pale wash. Otherwise we'll get some real serious oversaturation of the colour. So big blob of water on the palette. Thin it right down and just dab your brush, tip the brush back in, and then in the recesses just push a bit more colour. But then gently bring that colour, so again push it into the recesses with a lot of fluid, then dab your brush and just move that fluid around just to get that essence of pink elsewhere, give it that flesh tone. And then the next step is going to be a level of patience. I'm also trying to get some of this pink into those little holes because it will set there and it will give it a fleshy tone to it. Just giving everywhere a nice dollop of this pink. And then the next bit, like I say, is going to be being patient and just waiting for this to dry before we go back in and reset the highlights again. And when we come to these more exposed areas, I'm being a bit more gentle with the colour depth, not quite as much fluid on the brush. Okay, now we get some water onto the brush and just on the more exposed areas, just lift some of the colour back out, dry the brush off so it's not got a lot of anything on it, and then it will just pull the excess surface fluid off, taking the colour with it, and just leaving. And I'm concentrating on dragging off towards the middle where there's more light penetrating, and then what we're going to do is go back in with some of the flesh tones and reset them. So now for a bit of patience and just waiting for that to dry thoroughly. So now we've actually set that nice pink tone in there, we go back in with the medium flesh. And again, pick out those upper surface areas. It's already, most of the work's already done for us this time, so he's literally just popping the brush over those areas already done, so a lot quicker. And literally just re-picking out those highlights. And then once we've got enough of that done, which is a fairly quick process, it's going to be swapping back over to the basic flesh tone, and then just re-popping those highlights on the upper surface areas on top, just really giving a little bit of a zhuzh. I believe that is a technical painting term. So I think you can see, even with just like rapid flicks of the brush, it's just reinvigorating the colours we've already set. And now we can think about getting on with the next section. Okay, quite pleased with that. Right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go back in and pick out all those little teeth. We're not going to use white. So for those tiny little teeth, we're going to go in first of all with a little bit of dead flesh, which is another Vallejo colour. Just go in there. Just catch those little gnashy teeth that he has in some of these little mouth parts. I think that's got the majority of them, and then what we'll do is we'll just mix a little bit of the dead flesh with a little bit of the basic flesh, and then just go back and just catch the very tips of the teeth. Okay. Now the next step that I'm going to do is I'm going to try and give a bit more brightness to the jaws, and I'm just going to bring in a little bit of True Blood, and it's a green stuff world colour. Very nice, rich, bloody tone, as in the name would suggest. And I'm just going to try and sit it in and around some of the tubules and into the deeper recesses. Just to add a little bit more of an element of fascination, a bit more of a gory presence in here. And then we'll just wipe off the upper areas. Just a little bit of water on the brush. And in those areas where it doesn't quite come off as much as we'd want, just over the top, just re-dab in with a little bit of the pale flesh. I think that looks pretty good at that. So I think we'll call that done and move on to some of these other skin tones. Now for the actual skin tones, a lot of the work is really done for us in the way that the model is actually sculpted, if you like. So I've laid out here, we have, these are all Vallejo colours. We have dark grey, London grey, neutral grey, light grey, sky grey and dead white, which I'll put just above so you can see. But if we go for the dark grey first, I may also pull in a little bit of the dead flesh as well, just add a bit of colour. But if we take this section here where there's an eye, you can see the upper surface is very well lit by the lights that we have around us. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to re-emphasize all that's going on with the lights I've already got. So and then we'll come into this bit above. And literally we're really just using the contours that are already there and have been given to us. And if it starts to sink away into a recess, we leave it black. As it comes up onto the higher colours, then the higher prominences, then we're going to go brighter colours. So we'll do this panel here. And then what we're going to do is slowly work our way, brightening up the colours as we get towards some of these highlights. Just a little flick of colour in the edge of the eye here. And then on the upper surface, just on the very edge here, where the light would just catch that edge there. And I'll just come around that upper surface. And from the London grey into the neutral grey. And then we'll step through to light grey, and this time we'll start to emphasise where the colours are a little bit more. So we'll narrow up the band and dictate where the shine's going to be. And then on this little edge here. And through to the sky grey. And finally through to the dead white, and really now coming up onto those high tones, those upper surface areas. Okay, and then what we'll do is we'll transition to the next area. So we've given an area of quite a lot of highlight, so now what we want to do is leave a big area of darkness as we step into the next highlight. So the next highlight is going to be on this eye here, so let's try and concentrate it around there. And just draw in our map of where we're going to be colouring. And just a little highlight underneath the eye. We'll jump the colour tone, each time covering a little bit less area. Gone a little bit too far into the eye there, so we'll just pull that back. And then reset. And then we'll come on to, we'll leave a black border, and we'll then push through onto this tentacle here and highlight the tentacle. So we'll go into our darker tones and just draw our map of where we're going to go. Just try and keep it on these upper surface areas where the light would catch. And work our way just around this eye here. And on the end of the tentacle. And then again, work our way through our colour transitions, each time just striking with a little bit less colour. And then going through to our more highlight colours. And now we're on an upper surface area here where there's quite a lot of exposure. So we'll give it quite a decent amount of exposure with the darker greys. And then we're going to come across this plateau here where there's some quite deep marks in the modelling, but we'll carry that across to the other border, and then we'll start to lighten up towards the centre of those markings. And try and give a bit of an edge to it as we hit our lighter colours. And maybe even just bring in a bit of black to mix in with our darker greys, and just bring that edge back in a little bit. Just work a little bit of our darker greys back in. Okay, so we're going to work around our borders like that. Tentacles are just going to be exactly the same. We'll use this one here as an example. So we'll grab our darker grey. And now where there's not a lot of light going to be catching, we'll follow the natural curves that the model is giving us. And there's not a lot of light catching here, so we're not going to use a lot of colour. But on the bend, where we do catch a little bit of light at the top here, we'll just flicker a little bit of light in there. And go to our highlight colour and just let the eye know that we did catch a little bit of light. At the bottom of the bend here, just there. Just going to catch a little bit of light before we come up into the dark. And then this here is sort of underneath this overhang, so this bit isn't going to catch a lot of light. So what we will do, so we'll get our dark grey, and we'll just flick in a few lines so that the eye can pick up the curves that we're drawing in. And then we're coming up onto the upper surface and sounding it with the light's going to catch a bit more. So as the light comes over the top, we'll just catch a little bit more all the way down, and then on this side as well. We'll grab our lighter colour and just emphasise the edges of what we've just drawn in. And we'll work around the model, getting all of that done, and then hopefully we should have quite a shiny looking Shoggoth. Let's see what happens. So as you can see, anything that's on an upper surface has got quite a bright highlight, and then as we come onto the underside, I've gone much darker in the greys around here. And I might actually retouch the white in some of these areas here, because it does seem to leach the white into the grey, and we tend to lose a bit of vibrancy. It may even be worth completing all of this transition of colour and then just retouching in the white afterwards. Anyway, I'll progress on and I'll work my way around the rest of the model and come back once we've got him all done. So I just thought I'd stop for a few seconds and show you how the shading's going. So continuing just to really pick out areas that are more prominent to the light, and shading in sections. Just slowly working my way around the mini, and sort of, as I said, just really making sure that upper surface areas. I do quite like when you're doing a blocked section, is that if you sort of, like I'm doing here, you put a line up one edge, which is sort of where, from that angle where the light would catch the edge of the miniature, leave a little bit of gap, and then just do a second block of colour with like a little transition line between it. It just, I don't know, it works well when you're sort of demonstrating where the light is coming from. And then drop to your next grey, so I'll swap over to the neutral grey from the dark grey, and then just highlight the sort of single lined area. Then we'll go to the sky grey, and then just reinforce the edge where the light would be catching from above. Go back to the medium grey again, or neutral grey, sorry. And then, like I said, we'll now do the second line. And as you sort of passing into where the bend is, you'd actually get less of a hit from the light. So when you're putting your sky grey on, we'd sort of catch lots of this first portion where there's lots of exposure, and then just gently run off into nothing. And then what we'll do is we'll catch the second bit as it comes up onto the top. I'll work my way around. It's the same process all the way, but I just thought I'd just stop for a few seconds and do a little bit more, and then we'll get on with the eyes. So for the eye effect, I'm going to go for a fairly classic gem style approach. To achieve it, I'm all using Vallejo colours, and we have gory red, scarlet blood, orange fire, deep yellow, and then highlights will be in white. What you're best to do is work in a single colour at a time. Don't try and finish an eye, or else you'll find that the colours just lift each other off. So the idea is, with the gory red, is to paint most of the eye a dark red, just leaving a very small portion at the top that's actually got a little black, you leave a small black dot at the top. And let's see if I can find a slightly bigger eye so that you can see that done properly. Okay, so and just a little bit of black at the top there, and one here. And when you're doing this, and you are putting the highlights in, try to make sure that those little black areas are in the same place on every single eye, so that the light is coming from the same direction. I'll whip around the model, get all those done, and then on to the next section. So we've been around the model and put a red almost sphere in every eye, but just as you can see, left a little dark spot at the top. The next is to grab the blood scarlet, and then on every single eye we're going to just put a strike of red in the bottom left corner, just to like left running to the right, and we'll go around every single eye on the model doing that. Okay, so we've now been around every eye, making them look a little bit more vibrantly red. So next we're on to the orange fire, and now it's even finer control. And what we're going to do is just run a very thin line in that bottom left hand corner, just to really start to make it shine. And we'll go around every eye and do that again. So that's the orange, and now finally for the yellow, and then one more step left to do after this. But the yellow is now even more fine control, and just a thin yellow line in that orange, and around every single eye. And now for the most delicate part of all, is actually putting in the accent of the light. For that you need to just have a tiny dot of white on the very tip of your brush, and we're going to put a tiny dot there with a dot next door to it, and then a tiny dot over in the bottom right corner, and then work our way around the minute you're doing. Now the eyes aren't quite finished yet, they do need to be glossed, but we'll do that in a moment because we've got the teeth still left to do. For the teeth, I've picked some German black brown paint, some grunge brown, and some dead flesh, and we'll probably use a little bit of elfic flesh as well. There we go. And that's just to do the teeth. So brown first. And we'll just pick them out in the dark brown. Okay, and then we get some of the grunge brown. Just trying to leave a little root of the dark brown at the base. And do both sides of the tooth. And then we'll move on to the dead flesh. Again, both sides of the teeth. And then finally, just for a little bit of highlight, we'll do some elfic on the very tip. And again on the inside. I'll do the teeth on the other side of the jaw and I'll come back to you. Now, gloss varnish is one of those paints that does tend to sink through your palette, so we will drop it into a separate container. Good old trusty Reaper miniatures. And then we will work our way around the model, making those eyes nice and shiny. And bringing them to life. Okay, so we'll go around the eyes doing that, and then one last step before we base, and then we're about there. And then the last real step before going to the base is a bit more of Green Stuff World's True Blood, and just to redecorate the jaws. Now we've got the teeth in, just a little bit around the jaws, here and there, a little bit running up onto the gum line. And then here and there in the mouth. even on a little splatter onto the tentacle. There we go. Okay. So we'll do the base now. That's simply going to be an initial coat of dark sand, or sorry, brown sand actually. Then once the base is covered with brown sand, probably with a little bit of black in there, we'll then dry brush over the top with brown sand and then with pale sand. And I think that will more or less call it done. I may just put a little bit of a slime trail on with some wash. And that, as they say, is a wrap. Really pleased with the end result of the Shoggoth. Hope you like the miniature. Hope you've enjoyed the video. Only one thing left to say. Are we painting minis yet? Hell yeah! I'll catch you in the next one.